bonafide beats. Heavy hit splits, wild file style, freak flows fast, close chord dial, make links slate at the 8 pass, make more papes, too tired, crash, self-serve cake, all night nag, hurry home now, girl gets mad.
Welcome back to the Deep Water Podcast, and I hope that all is well. I hope everybody is sheltering in place or doing whatever you need to do to take care of the things that really matter in life in these uncertain times that we're in right now. But we're here to provide you with a little bit of a distraction, a healthy distraction, because we're going to talk about football. And specifically today, we're going to discuss the linebacker unit with the Miami Dolphins. But we have a little house cleaning that we need to take care of first. Because in the Setting the Edge episode, we did not place those defensive linemen in those buckets that we like to put players in. So we're going to go ahead and do that now before we even get started with this linebacker group. So once again, for those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm going to put a link for you to go back and watch the Running Man episode so you can get familiar with these buckets that we like to place players into, because we have 4 buckets. In reality, we only cover 3 buckets, because if your name isn't mentioned, you're definitely in that 4th bucket. Okay? So let's get started and see what Miami has on this defensive line. Beginning with studs. There are no studs on this defensive line. Do not allow these signings to fool you. Miami does not have any studs on the defensive line. Are there potential studs? Yes, but that doesn't count as a stud, okay? Now let's move on to starters. There are 4 starters on this defensive line, okay? That includes Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Christian Wilkins, and Devon Godshaw. Let's move on to incumbents. There are 4 incumbents on this roster. We have Zach Sealer, Taco Charlton, Jonathan Ledbetter, and Gerald Willis III. Now, there's one other person who is technically listed as a defensive lineman, but that person has never been a defensive lineman in the NFL. And his name is Charles Harris. And I have no idea what Miami is going to do with Charles Harris. I do realize that Charles Harris is cheap labor. I also realize that Brian Flores likes Charles Harris. So there's a possibility that Charles Harris is in for a full position change to linebacker, and he gets invited to camp to prove himself one last time as a first-round draft pick, because at this point, he's considered a bust. So let's move on to why we're here. The linebacker group. And as you can see, the Dolphins currently have 14 linebackers on this roster. And because of that, we're not going to do a film study on this particular episode. And the proximity to the draft, considering we still have to go over the secondary, the interruption of this coronavirus really stacked us behind. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through these linebackers, and then we're going to run through the secondary, and then we're going to focus on the draft. But there's one thing also that we're going to do, because we're starting to get some really good questions in the comments section. As a matter of fact, the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to address a particular question about the quarterback position from one of you guys, or gals, as the case may be. But there's a particular intriguing option out there that I would like to address because I have my own thoughts about it. The team would like to address because they have their own thoughts about it. And I'm sure you have your own thoughts about it. So we're going to post that comment pretty quickly here. And I'd like to get more feedback from you guys about what you think about that position. Okay? So let's go ahead and move on to these linebackers. Okay? So we have 3 new linebackers on this roster. And what do we like to do when we get new players, regardless of position? We start by going with the NFL's evaluation on those players if they're entering their 4th year or they're entering their 5th year. And what we have new is Landon Roberts is on his 5th season. Vince Beagle is going into his 4th season. Raekwon McMillan is also going into his 4th season. And Kamu Grugier-Hill is going into his 5th season. So we're going to discuss those linebackers. We're going to ignore Jerome Baker because I know he's kind of like a little elephant in the room, but Bake is only going into his 3rd season, and trying to draw any kind of conclusion about Bake at this point is kind of unfair to the player because he's still learning the game. But Baker put up 126 tackles last year. Sometimes that can be a good thing or sometimes that could be a bad thing, but we're going to give him a pass for right now, right? So let's start with the big name free agent in Kyle Van Noy. So through the draft process, this was the conclusion drawn by the NFL and Nolan Naraki. He's a good-sized, athletic, smooth-moving stand-up player who projects best as a 3-4 right outside linebacker, but could also warrant consideration from 4-3 teams as a Will or Sam. He isn't without flaws, but he has a unique ability to play up the field laterally or in reverse. And if you look at the way that the Patriots used Kyle Van Noy, because I'm ignoring his career in Detroit, let's be honest. The way that the Patriots used Kyle Van Noy, he exactly fits that description. Kyle Van Noy has come off the edge. Kyle Van Noy has played in the middle, and he's played inside of both of those formations inside the Patriots defense, which Brian Flores is very familiar with Kyle Van Noy. And what is Brian Flores like about Kyle Van Noy? It's called versatility. Kyle Van Noy can do a lot of things, and he can do a lot of things well. So that is a fix at one of the linebacker positions because he can play on all 3 downs. And it was a very, very good signing for Miami. So let's move on to Kamu Grugier-Hill. And looking at him from an athletic standpoint, I believe he is direct competition or depth for Jerome Baker's spot. And going to the NFL's website, he was 6'2" and he ran a 4.45 at the 40. Okay. His lack of natural size and strength is a concern, but could be covered up as a 4-3 will linebacker. If he can get his weight up, he might be able to project inside in a 3-4 defense as long as he is kept clean. Has a shot to be a day 3 selection and make an NFL team. And what we do know about Grugier-Hill is he's become a very good special teams player, and he is good in sub packages in Philadelphia. But do I envision him as a long-term solution at the linebacker position? No. But I think this is a quality signing for a speedy, long linebacker who can play in sub packages and play on special teams. The next addition is Landon Roberts. And if you saw any of the interviews after that Patriots game in Week 17, you know this is Brian Flores' guy. Brian Flores invested a lot in this guy, okay? And this guy is about character, and this guy is about effort and being dependable, okay? And on the NFL's website, his head coach calls Roberts one of the best leaders he's ever been around and raves about his work ethic and passion for the game. Despite his athletic limitations, Robert posted outstanding tackle production and was a commanding presence in the box, but his lack of speed and athletic ability create a paper-thin margin for error in the NFL that could be tough for him to overcome. Well, guess what? He's entering his 5th season in the NFL. So he's overcome that. And as a matter of fact, that versatility allowed him to play fullback in addition to depth at linebacker and special teams. And he got us Week 17 on a play-action pass from Brady in Foxborough. So I believe that this is another quality signing for special teams, another depth player inside, and also because he can play fullback, if anything goes wrong with Chandler Cox, if Chandler Cox goes down, we have a backup fullback. So this is another smart signing by Chris Grier and Brian Flores. Moving on to Vince Beagle. There's a reason that Miami tendered him quick, fast, and in a hurry and made a trade for him to start with, because there's something there. If you watched Vince Beagle this season, he was a bargain, and there are raw tools there to work with. So let's look at the NFL's description of Beagle coming out. Effort-based worker bee with edge-setting hands and attitude. Saw that on tape. But a lack of power that could lead to inconsistency in play. Beagle's football character is off the charts, and he can be counted on to put effort in improving areas that need work. He lacks individual rush talent, but could be a good fit for teams using exotic rush packages. Does that sound like Miami to you? It sounds like it to me. And it says he has average NFL ceiling, but has the demeanor and traits to be a special teams demon. So extending Vince Beagle was smart because one thing he did do this season was he, next to Raekwon McMillan, he might have been our best edge setting linebacker. And what's going to be funny is because I made that comment about Raekwon McMillan, I'm going to have to defend it to some of you folks out there because we're going to get real clear about Raekwon McMillan and his game right now. Now, I don't know what it is about Raekwon McMillan. I don't know if he rubbed some people the wrong way. I don't know what is going on, but the player you see on tape doesn't fit the evaluation from fans, and it doesn't seem to fit the NFL's evaluation. He missed his rookie season, but because he's going into his fourth season, it's fair to draw some type of a conclusion about Raekwon McMillan. So what does the NFL say? McMillan has too many issues standing his ground and leveraging his gap as an interior run defender and could end up outside in the pros. He might have benefited from playing alongside a slew of NFL talent, but he's active and he plays the game with good instincts. He has the potential to become an average starter in the league. So what did Raekwon do? Raekwon's first year as a starter in 2018, 13 months from his ACL injury, Raekwon led all NFL linebackers in run stops from week 5 to the end of the 2018 season. Does that sound like someone, an interior defender who couldn't leverage his gaps to you? Well, how did he follow that up in 2019? Because we all know that Raekwon began the season behind Sam Egwavon for some unexplained reason. I called it tanking, but we're not going to get into that debate right now. Let's look at what happened once Raekwon began to play in 2019. Did you realize that once again, halfway through the 2019 season, that he was the number 1 rated linebacker in football? Raekwon McMillan played with his eyes on fire when he got into that lineup, and Brian Flores did some intriguing things with Raekwon McMillan because traditionally Raekwon McMillan has been an inside linebacker in a 4-3, and Raekwon actually played outside in the 34. He played inside in the 34. He played inside in the 43, and he played outside in the 43. And it was the first time in his life that he had ever done that because there's an intriguing interview out there. I'm going to see if I can find the link, and I'm going to post it where he was talking about how you have to view the game from a different lens when you stand up outside and you have a tackle in front of you. And he did exceptionally well to the point to where you could see on tape that Raekwon has a reputation around this league. That's one thing you can see on tape that you can't see in a television broadcast. When running backs see Raekwon McMillan in the hole, they start dancing. They get happy feet. They don't just run it up in there anymore. And that's a good thing moving into the 2020 season for Raekwon McMillan. So what does that leave Miami with at the linebacker position? Leaving the first stage of free agency. We're going to break our boxes out right now. And beginning with studs, there are no studs on this linebacker group. Do not fool yourself. Kyle Van Noy is probably the best linebacker in this group, and he is not a stud. Kyle Van Noy is extremely good. Kyle Van Noy is consistent, and he's dependable. But the stud label is reserved for folks who put together consistent elite performances. All right? So how many starters do we have? I see 4. I see Kyle Van Noy. I see Raekwon McMillan. I see Vince Beagle. And I see Jerome Baker. What about incumbents? I see 4. Andrew Van Ginkel, Elandon Roberts, Camus Grugier-Hill, and Sam Egwavon. But I'm also going to throw Charles Harris in there because I believe there's a position switch coming for him, and I don't think that Brian Flores has given up on that kid yet. So we're going to have to step back and wait on the outcome of Charles Harris's situation in Miami. So that gives Miami, as far as I can see, 8 linebackers that deserve to be on an NFL roster. 8. So I expect Miami to come out of this draft and free agency with 2, possibly as many as 4 new linebackers before we get to training camp. Okay? And I told you that this video was going to be pretty quick. We're going to run through the linebackers. We're going to come right back. We're going to run through the secondary. And we're going to start getting our draft evaluation and our picks for Miami in the draft together. But we're going to do this in a kind of a unique way. I don't want to give the secret away yet, but we're going to do this a little differently than what we've seen some other folks doing. Now, back to what I said originally in the beginning of this video is we're going to start addressing some comments from you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this first comment that we're going to address on the screen because this is a hot button topic for Miami Dolphins fans right now. Of course, we're talking about quarterbacks. And shout out to my man Moya TV for asking this great question. Does anybody have an opinion on grabbing Cam Newton? You know he's got a chip on his shoulder about what would happen in Carolina and would love to prove they messed up. What do y'all think? And you can see we already responded to the comment. And this next video is going to address our stance on that comment. And it's going to come quickly. It may come today. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Deep Water Podcast. Thank you, folks, for listening. Thank you, folks, for subscribing. Thank you, folks, for the support. And we love y'all, and we hope you stay safe.
You think you're smarter than me, you ain't smarter than me. Solo nice. Bonafide beats. Heavy hit spits, wildfire style, freak flows fast, close chord dial, make links slate at the 8 pass, make more papes, too tired, crash, self-serve cake, all night nag, hurry home now, girl gets mad, love lifestyle, love lace pad, every extra mile goes got grab, rose foes.